Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Modern Divorce Podcast. Today, we are in for a real treat. We are going to be talking to Carly Loving, and she is a divorced mama who has quite the story, including a successful bout with nesting. And now, many of you probably have no idea what nesting even is, and I didn't either until a few years ago, but it's cool. It's not for everyone, and I can't wait for you to meet her and hear more about it. Welcome to the show, Carly.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I am so glad to be here, and thank you for asking me to join your podcast.
Absolutely. So, you've got quite the story, and our listeners are always looking to kind of learn from the guests and feel a sense of connection and maybe not, like they're not so alone and isolated. And so, your willingness to share your story here 4 years out after your divorce is great. So, let's give everybody a little bit of background. How many kids do you have?
Okay, I have three beautiful boys, ages 20, 17, and 11. I've been divorced about 4 years, and it was a long process. It wasn't something that was just a light switch. It wasn't something that was overnight. It was a long journey, and I feel like we did it gracefully. But and my children to this day still, thank us, and we're fortunately still very, very good friends. So,
Okay. All right. Well, let's get some more background information. How long were you married?
so we were married 18 years.
Mm.
Um, so funny story, if you want to really start from the beginning. So I was set to actually. It's funny. I'm from Texas, from a small town in Texas, and I had been in Austin going to community college, got into myself in a little bit of trouble at the age of 19, 20, and met this boy over the summer. And, we'd known each other for a while. And we dated each other over the summer. And the night before I was leaving for ASU, because that's where my brother lived at the time, and we still live together now. The night before I left, my classes were registered, my U-Haul was packed. I had, from a southern town, I had a debutante dress and found out I was pregnant with my first child.
Hmm.
And crazy story, my mom, who just, I was 20 years old, she sobbed and sobbed and sobbed.
Hmm.
And she said, "Is there somebody you want to go talk to?" And I said, "Yeah, I want to go talk to my granddad," which was her father. And that man had been married 7 times.
Wow.
Yes, Billy. So he had been around the block. So he sat me down and he just looked at me. He said, "Do you love him?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Does he love you?" And I said, "Yeah." And he looked at my mom. He said, "I don't know what the problem is." He said, "She's an
Wow.
old maid by now."
Wow. What a perspective.
No, so it was kind of, this is kind of where my story starts, because it was my granddad. He just set me down. He said, "I've been married 7 times." And he said, out of all the, women I've been with, out of all the money I've made, and he was a contractor. And he said, out of all the houses I've built, he said, there's one thing that it comes down to, and it's family. And he said, you take 20 years out of your life, whether it's from 20 to 40 or, 40 to 60. And he said, that's when you raise your kids. He said, it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
So my
So,
mom,
did you want to get married at that time?
so it was kind of one of those things that I was very determined that I was, going to have children, and I love this man. And yeah, so we got married within 3 months, and we're married for 18 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what led to the divorce?
So unfortunately, I think our divorce, there was never like one big thing that
Mm-hmm.
happened. It was more
Mm-hmm.
of just we became on autopilot, kind of. We became more of just friends, became more of just roommates.
Mm-hmm.
And, unfortunately, the restaurant business is a very, very hard business. You work, separate hours than, other people, and our schedules were just so different.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as I grew up older and he grew up, we just kind of became two different people.
Mm-hmm.
And and it was just we still loved each other, but we just weren't in love with each other
Mhm,
as
mhm.
much.
And
And
so did you two come to that conclusion at the same time, or was one of you done before the other?
no, so unfortunately, I was the one that wanted out,
Mhm,
and my children know that.
mhm,
And I've been very vocal about that as well.
mhm,
So it was my decision. He was very, very hurt,
mm,
and it was not a two-way street by
mhm,
any means.
mhm,
So that's why this story is even more important,
mhm,
because someone was really, really hurt, and
mhm,
that was my ex-husband.
mhm.
Um and of course my children, and I tell them all the time, guys, this was my decision, and like, we are going to make this right, some way, somehow. And that was very important for me, and it
Mhm.
was very important for me for my ex-husband to not go down into a downward spiral as well. And I
Okay,
think,
so
yeah,
what you just said here is so important because all of us want an amicable relationship and we want
yeah,
to protect our children and we want to recognize that our family is evolving and it's still our family even if it looks different. And someone leaving someone usually starts this process of a huge blow up, and you have figured out and you've analyzed and you've committed to figuring out, how do I exit a marriage when I'm hurting someone? How do I honor that person? How do
mhm,
I protect them from a downward spiral and protect my children and be honest and authentic about where I'm coming from? So
yeah.
help us understand that, because that is some heavy stuff.
No, it was some heavy stuff, and to be honest, it did not come lightly, and it took probably, I mean, a really good solid 2 years to get to that place. And unfortunately, during those 2 years, I lost uh, both my parents.
Mm,
And both of my parents had gotten sick. My dad, unfortunately, died of cirrhosis. He drank himself to death, and my mother died of breast cancer.
mm,
So there was about a good 4 years where I just watched these two people. And I always tell my children, the two most important things in your life is to be happy and healthy. Because I saw my dad, he was not happy, and my mom was not healthy.
mm,
And, I respected my mother after, when my dad got sick, uh, because that was a very hard time. But after he passed, I finally just looked at my ex husband and just said, life is too short. I just said, we have to address this elephant in the room, because he had been sleeping in another room for quite some time. And, we just weren't communicating. We weren't on the same page. We weren't emotionally involved with each other. It was just more of just like, let's just be here for the kids. And after my dad passed away, I just realized, like, life is so precious and so short. And both my parents were 65 years old. And I just went, I need more. I need more out of my life. I need more out of my relationship. And I can't live my life just for my children. I have to let them know that no matter what you do in life, you have to be happy and you have to be healthy.
mhm.
That was a huge part for me. And after my dad passed away, it took a full year for us to finally unwind the whole process.
Okay. And what is nesting?
So nesting. So I got this idea. So, I worked for Nectar Juice Bar, and it was crazy because I had been talking to this customer that always came in, and he was the one that gave me the idea, because he was telling me about his divorce and what he was going through. And he said, as hard as it is, he said, I just wish every, parent wasn't even given the option of this. And he said, it should be that the kids stay in one house and the parents move in and out.
Mhm,
And I just looked at him and I went, wow. I was like, that's actually a crazy, but really good concept. I said, I've never even heard of that. And he said, no. He said, it's just so sad to see these kids being dragged from home to home. They're living out of suitcase to suitcase. They get, one weekend with their mom, they get another weekend with their dad. And then, there's like all these certain drop off times and all this kind of crazy stuff. And I just went, he was like, my kids were just so stressed about stuff like that. And it just clicked. And I just went, okay, that's it. That's what I will do.
Okay.
And when I brought that up to my ex-husband, because it was very important for us, for the children to feel like they had still a very, very good foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And it was not easy. I don't recommend it for everyone, but if you can get past your own ego and your own emotions and really, really, and it doesn't, it could be 2 months, it could be 6 months, it could be a year, but just let the kids know that, because their lives have changed so much that their parents are split, that you don't have to uproot them from their house. And my children have a lot of friends whose parents are divorced,
Mm-hmm.
and it was very difficult when I told them, or when we actually told them together, that we were getting a divorce. They just said, I don't want to live like so and so and so and so. I don't want to go from home to home, and it, you know, so it was, that was very, very something that they brought up immediately to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I just looked at them. I said, you're not going from home to home. I
Mm-hmm.
said, your lives will stay the same.
Mm-hmm.
I said, this is between me and your dad. This was not your fault.
Mm-hmm.
So nothing for you is going to change. You have your same house, you have your same room, you have your same, closet, clothes, and all that kind of stuff. So
So when you brought this up with your ex-husband and you said, I think that we should, at this point, everybody knew you were getting divorced, right? That wasn't, it was well beyond that discussion point.
yes,
And you said, hey, I think that the kids should stay here and you and I should come up with a schedule where we leave when it's not our parenting time.
yeah,
And
yeah.
how did he react to that?
He's such an old soul, and he's such a sweet soul. And he loves, you know, our children. We love our children the same. And he just said, I think that's a great idea.
Wow.
So he was on board with it, even though he was still very, very upset.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it was kind of one of those things that, and his schedule, like I said, is very different being a chef.
Mm-hmm.
It was almost, we were kind of doing that anyways, because he was
Right.
sitting in another room, and it just became like, oh, okay, well, you use the hallway bathroom with the boys, and type of deal. But it
Okay, yeah. So let's talk specifics. Does that mean that you kept, did you have any privacy? Like were you sharing the same bedroom? Like how did that work?
Oh, no, no, no. You don't share the same no. No, you don't share the same bedroom. You got to have boundaries. And it became where he kind of became one, he kind of had his own room with his own
Mm-hmm.
bathroom, and
Mm-hmm.
I had my, the master
Mm-hmm.
bedroom with my own bathroom.
Okay.
And we separated our stuff. He would come in and out. I remember one time I got mad at him because he left me with no coffee.
Yeah. I mean, there
And
has
I
to be
went,
practical
okay,
issues.
this is going to be a problem if you come in the
Right.
house and I come back and I wake up Monday morning and there's no coffee left.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that was more of a bigger deal than anything else.
Okay. So did the two of you get one other apartment that you also shared, or did you each have your own additional space? Like, how did you handle that?
Well, we each had our own additional space. I mean, kind of, I had friends that I could go stay with. I had a brother I could go stay with, him the same. And sometimes we just made it work where we just stayed in the same house and we let the children kind of see us together, and then we'd go into our separate rooms as well. And that you have to really be mindful and focused. And, I don't know if there's people that are seeing other people, at the time while you're going through a divorce. You kind of really have to put all that stuff aside,
Mm.
really just focus on the children.
Mm-hmm.
So it just depends on what people can do financially. We fortunately were able to do it where we were just, I could go stay somewhere else for a little while, same for him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so would you say it does not sound like you were experiencing a high conflict divorce?
No, it was not high conflict, but it was still just as sad and traumatizing for us as a family. Um,
Absolutely.
And that doesn't mean that somebody who has a high, I mean, because I've recently gone through a breakup that's very traumatizing. So I get that, but thankfully my divorce was not that way.
Mm,
So that's what's hard, to be able to have people where they can put stuff aside like that,
mhm,
where you would have to get a separate apartment, you would have to get a separate place, but people are going to have to do that anyways.
mhm.
And we did that in the long run anyways.
Right,
He moved to a whole different state.
right.
Um, so it was not very traumatizing, but it was hard for my boys for sure. Uh,
Absolutely. And I don't ever want to, insinuate that if your divorce is in high conflict, that somehow this hasn't been a huge life-changing traumatic event. It is
no, no,
always a
yeah,
huge
no, but
life-changing
everybody has
event.
the yeah, yeah, no, but everybody has their own story, and how we were able to do it so gracefully, I don't know. I think that's just always been the personality between me and my ex-husband.
Mhm,
And when we, because we didn't even get a divorce lawyer, we
mm,
got a mediator.
mhm.
And it was just something that we spent $400. It,
Wow.
yeah, I know. So it was, but I mean, we both cried, and, it was still hard. And my children cried, and my little one had still looked at me. I guess it was about a year and a half ago. And he said, "This is all your fault. Well, my dad is not here." And
Oh,
I looked at him. I said, "You're right." I said, it was my decision. And I said, "And I'm sorry." And I said, "If you ever want to sit down and, talk about it," I said, "I will give you my honest opinion." And it wasn't until about 6 months after that that um, he really, really listened to me. And, had told you before, that I've always told my children, I said, divorce is not going to be the worst thing that happens to us, but death is, and hate. And I told Levi, my little one, I said, "I don't hate your father." I said, "Unfortunately, we just, grew apart." I said, "But you have two parents that get along and that love you and support you. And, we just love each other in different ways." And
mm,
I said, "If we can do that and still be a family, and, you know, and be here for you," I said, that you couldn't ask for anything better." And I said, "And I never wanted, because my little one associates the divorce with him moving." And I said, "I never wanted your dad to move." I said, "But this was a great opportunity for him."
mhm.
And he just looked at me and he went, "You didn't want him to move?" And I said, "No." And he just started crying. And
Ugh.
so, yeah,
I think the hardest part for children when their parents get divorced are two things. One, conflict,
yes,
conflict and hate. Bad,
hmm,
bad, 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 bad.
yes,
But the other thing is that if you lose a parent due to a move or the conflict driving one parent away or one parent keeping the children from the other parent,
yeah, yeah.
that that loss is something that one parent can't make up for.
Oh, no, no. And I don't try to.
Mhm.
And, and my ex-husband is amazing at calling them and FaceTiming them. And he's actually, honestly, probably more there for them now than when he was in the house,
Wow.
because he's much happier. He's got an amazing girlfriend, and he's got this amazing job, and he communicates more with them on a completely different level than he did when we were living together, because
Mhm.
he was always so stressed, and he was stressed about providing for the family. And he was, he had his own, he had this, "I got to be a man, and I've got to provide, and I got to work, 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 work." And so, but I feel like we've come together very mutually on this deal.
Mhm.
You might say otherwise, I don't know, but we do communicate very well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you've worked a lot of things out. Um, I think people who are good candidates for nesting usually have older children
Yes.
because it usually doesn't last forever.
Yeah.
But if you've got somebody that's like a senior or a junior in high school and you
Mhm.
can preserve that intact household for them for a year or two,
Yeah.
or give them that transition time like you did, that can be really, really great.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
even then, when people are analyzing, are we good candidates? One of the things that I always ask people that I'm consulting with is, well, what were your fights like when you were married? Because usually the relationship dynamics that you have when you're married that lead to your divorce will continue but get worse. And so
Yeah.
you can sort of predict, like if you're a couple like you, where you two just withdrew and you weren't on the same page, but it doesn't sound like there were knockdown, drag out fights or anybody was spying on somebody else or abusive.
Yeah.
Those would not be good times to share a space. In those times, you want to remove interaction between the parents to minimize conflict in front of the children. But
Exactly.
if you can do what you did, it can be a really great workable situation and it can save people a lot of money.
Yeah, yeah. No, and I really agree with that, and I guess that's why I'm very thankful that there wasn't, like I said in the beginning, there wasn't this huge. We did have a couple of really big fights. In fact, we had one big fight in front of one of my older son's friends,
Ooh,
and that was when I went okay, and it was kind of one of the first, not maybe not first, but maybe one out of three over a couple of years. And my kids were just like, These aren't my parents."
right.
Um, and that's when I just went, we can't do this, and we can't continue to be these people. Um, so yeah, we did withdraw. And like I said, there wasn't like a big thing that happened. But if there are two people that aren't getting along, and it's very turbulent, and you can't even be in the same room without fighting and talking to each other, nesting is not going to work. So you definitely do have to remove yourself out of the situation. Um, but if and maybe you are those people, and maybe you can come together and really focus on the kids. I don't know. It takes a mindset to be able to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Be able to be like, okay, who really are the adults here?
Mm-hmm.
Because what I have found um, in some of my situations in relationships, that when I'm having a harder time, I'm the one being the child, and my children are parenting me.
Wow.
And it's just recently become quite uh, mind blowing to me to be like, wow, how did I raise such children that are like, mom, this is these are not who we are. And I go, okay, you're right. And they're very grounded, and I feel like I've given them that foundation. And we all get off track. We all go in and out of of our lane. But I feel like that they have been given that solid foundation, which is nice.
That's
So
amazing.
yeah.
Okay, two questions for you
Yeah.
before
Throw
we
it.
end for today. I want to know, what was the thing that you learned? What was the most valuable lesson that you learned from your divorce?
Oh gosh. That's a heavy one. The most valuable lesson that I learned, honestly, is that I had so much guilt, so much guilt. The guilt of leaving my husband, even though it's what I wanted, about undid me, because I felt so guilty, because I was letting my mom down. I was letting my children down. I was letting, my brother and my sister-in-law. I felt like such a failure, but I wasn't happy with myself. And I remember my mom not even being able to say your ex-husband. And I remember cringing, because I was like, Mom, he is my ex-husband now. Like, this is reality, and I can't feel guilty about it anymore. And once I got past the guilt, and once I got past the shame, and once I got past of, knowing that everybody knew that I was the one that left him, even, but it was what I needed and it was what I wanted. And once my children looked at me and said, "We just want you to be happy, Mom. At the end of the day, we just don't want you to fight with Dad. We want you to be happy as long as you guys can be in the same room and talk to each other." They're like, "We'll be fine." And I just remember that. I mean, it gives me goosebumps when I think about it right now. But I just remember thinking, you know what? You're right. Because this is what is going to make me happy in the future if I can just get past this guilt part. And it is. I mean, I can tell you right now, I love my ex husband, but I think we're both mutually on the same page that we're glad now that we're not married to each other. And I'm thankful to still be able to have a relationship with his parents. Um, and his sister and I have just, recently just kind of come back around, and so we're able to do Christmas mornings together. We're able to do, he can't really do Thanksgiving because he's a chef, but um, so it's still he's still a part of our lives. But I know to this day that I don't have any regrets about it because I know it's the decision I needed to make for myself. So you have to live your life for yourself. You have to live your life not for your children. And as hard as that's going to be, as long as you can do it gracefully and peacefully with love and like I said, not hate.
So, how did you process that guilt and that shame? Because many, many times it is women who are leaving,
Hmm.
and many, many, many times that guilt and shame can be overwhelming. So it's sort of a you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't.
Yeah. Um, Gosh, I don't know. I think it took a lot of inner work, to be honest. And I think it took a lot of just strength. Um, and then it took a lot of me just, focusing on what made me happy, and not thinking about, all the white noise and the other people that were talking, and knowing that it was going to work out as long as, my ex-husband and I could make it work mutually, because I didn't want to be angry. I didn't want to be hateful. And, but I wanted to be happy, and I wanted my kids to be happy, and I wanted them to see a happy mom.
Hmm.
And um, so I'm not really, I'm not really sure how to answer that one. It was a lot of inner work. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I said two questions, but there's one more question that I have for you.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to feel normal after you started the process of divorce?
Well, so um, that's a loaded question again. Unfortunately, I started the process 2 years before my ex-husband did. So by the time, I had given him a year to sign the papers, and by that time, I was already moved on, which I think was very insensitive of me. Um, I think you know, dating somebody, you know, during a divorce is not the best idea. But I was already like, hey, I've moved on. Um, so I don't recommend that. Uh, but I think it was about a year after we
A
finally,
year after the paperwork was signed?
yeah,
So
that I,
that was you had 2 years before you told your husband, then
yeah,
you had a year-long process, and then
yeah,
you had a year after that. So
yeah.
roughly 4 years of a
Yeah.
transition.
No, and I tell people that it was a 4 year, and I don't know if he would say that because I think he feels like he got a little blindsided. But he was sleeping in another room for 2 years. So but I remember looking at him and this is not the relationship that you want. I
Mhm.
said, when you find the relationship where you're happy in, I said, you're going to realize that we made the right decision. And I think he's in there. I think
Mm.
he's in that with this girl that he's dating, and they're living together, and she's been at my house for Levi's birthday, and I mean they're like a perfect match. I'm like, you guys are so compatible. This is great. I know that's awkward for some people to say, but I want to see him happy. And I think
Right.
he wants to see me happy. And I think now he realizes, like, yeah, we did make a right decision. But nobody wants to break up their family,
No.
and uproot their children, or have chaos or anything like that. But yeah, it's a long process, and it's not a light switch, and you do have to be mindful of the other person.
Hmm.
And trust me, I was angry at times too, and he got angry at times with me, and then my children were like, can you talk to dad? And I'm like, no, that's your deal. And they were laughing. They're like, oh, okay, now we get it. So it's but now that the dust is all settled, and we've kind of come into this new modern family, as I like to say it.
Hmm.
I think we're both much happier, and our kids love us just as much,
Hmm.
and they really have thanked us. I mean, my older two for sure. My little one's kind of coming around, but you have to have stability, and you have to have two parents that work together to make it right for them. So,
Well, thank you so much for your time today.
yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate it.
I know you are the owner of 7 different Nectar franchises. Is that right?
Well, actually, two. So I own
Two?
two, but I've
Okay.
opened 12 of their corporate locations.
Okay. And where are the two, just in case people want to come and
Oh,
meet
yeah. No, they
you?
can come. So I actually live in Scottsdale, but I own two in Chandler, one by the Chandler Mall and one off of Rave Road. So,
Okay. All right.
yeah,
Awesome. Awesome.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much and have
All
a
right. Thank
wonderful day.
you. All right. You too.